episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Has here, back with another AFL round review. Round 19 has come, it has gone, and has given us a ton to talk about. And joining us today from this last year's supporter series and former podcaster, Mr. Jamie Oliver. Jamie, great to have you back on the podcast, sir.
G'day, Donnie. Nice to be here yet again.
I know I saw on your Twitter, thing is constant constant podcast guest. I absolutely
Yeah,
love that
freelance.
addition.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely love that. That is a great transition, sir.
yeah. I
But
couldn't really keep the old label. I felt like a bit of a fake.
I can't really argue myself. I used to have a sports podcast, and unfortunately my co-host got super busy, so it was hard to
Yeah,
do this one plus that one at the same time. So I kind of let that one unfortunately retire. Maybe Coach Hess's Sports Corner may come back very, very soon if I can ever get the opportunity, but it's a lot of work to put in two podcasts or three
yeah,
podcasts a week. So
absolutely.
it's always fun. So we'll join right into it. Round 19 has come. I know for you, unfortunately, Port Adelaide falling just a little bit short. The damn pies, and it was a heck of a game, but we'll talk about that later. But
Yeah,
overall, thoughts on this round, because as we had kind of set off, Mike, before we hopped on, a couple of absolute cracking games of footy kept us on our seats this entire weekend.
yeah, yeah. Well, like you said, we were speaking off camera before, and I think that there's a lot of teams who are jostling for spots, so it's do or die time. There's not much time left in the season, so we're getting a lot of teams putting in a bit of extra effort, just to try and latch onto one of the probably few top 8 spots that are up for grabs. And in saying that, there are a few spots up for grabs. So, um, yeah, there's a lot of teams really, really vying for it and really, really putting in a lot of extra effort. And yeah, so as a footy fan, we get the blessing of a lot of close matches. If you're a supporter of either team, hopefully you're on the better side of it. But if you're a neutral, then it's a lot of great content to watch.
Definitely, for sure. Or sometimes if you're a half neutral, you want one team to win to make things more interesting, and then it doesn't turn
Yeah,
out that way. And I'll explain that particular quote here in a little bit because I know
yeah,
Jamie knows
yeah,
exactly what I'm talking about. So we'll jump to Friday night footy. The doggies with a nice little bounce back after kind of dropping one to the Swans previous week at Marvel Stadium, get a 90-49 win over the Bombers. And unfortunately, I think the Bombers are trending the wrong way. Doggies kind of settling themselves, putting themselves nice and solidly in the five. Essendon's their grip on the finals, unfortunately, is loosening.
yeah, absolutely. Which is interesting because they had a real hot patch there, Essendon, where you probably thought that they could make up the numbers in the top 8 come finals time, but I think a couple of key injuries have come along and they look like they're tiring a little bit and dropping off. And Bulldogs, on the other hand, they've probably got Essendon at a good time because I don't actually think highly of the Bulldogs. They've done well to be in the position that they are. But just a few question marks for mine over them. However, you take on who you fixtured to play each weekend. And yeah, like I said, it looks like they got Essendon at a good time and they did what they needed to do. They put them to the sword quite heavily, which is good for percentage and it's good for their confidence with 5 games left to go.
Yeah, definitely. This Essendon team. I mean, they were again. It's kind of like St. Kilda a little bit too. As they started off on fire, they were the
Mm,
talk of the AFL world, and I think they've kind of cooled off a little bit. And I think people kind of figured out how to attack them. And unfortunately, I hate to say this. I mean, Coach Scott can only coach out so many of the issues that Essendon had previously. And I think you're starting to see some of those things pop up a little bit again. Dougie's clinical, Marcus Bontempelli again. I mean,
mm.
putting up why many people are talking like he's very much in the Brownlow contention with Nick Dacos and either Butters or Rosie from Port Adelaide. So it's going to be a very interesting Brownlow count night because there's going to be some
Yeah, for
interesting
sure.
3 pointers for absolutely for sure. And with Libba and oh my gosh, why am I totally losing his name?
Trelaw.
Trelaw, exactly. I was like, why is my tongue not working?
Yeah. It happens.
I think a few votes may get stolen off him a little bit. As much as I love Marcus Bontempelli, there's enough high caliber midfielders in that Dougie's
Mm,
team that I think, unfortunately, I'm just not sure if he's going to win a Brownlow unless he has an absolutely blind, absolutely nuts year, and none of his other guys have like a great game. Because you kind of
yeah.
have to be the man on your team to be able to win it. I think it's the reason why Petrarca and Oliver may never win a Brownlow because they're going to take votes off each other. So
Snatching. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, which is kind of weird to
Yeah.
say, but I mean, it's just it is what it is when it comes to it. So again, Dougie's really good. Jamaro Ugelhagen has finally started to find some consistency
Yeah.
going
He's definitely
forward.
impressed me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it'll be very interesting. Like I said, Essendon. I mean, they are drowning, and they only have a teacup to try to get the water out of the boat. And unfortunately, I think they
Yeah.
may be in a little bit of trouble going forward, but we'll have to see.
Yeah.
So
Losing Ridley really hurts.
exactly.
He's both senior and such a talented key backman.
Yeah, I mean, Zerk Thatcher, their defenders are doing everything they can, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, they just don't have a lot of help. If it gets on them, they don't have a lot of help from their midfielders. It's just the defensive structure is just not there to help them out. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, that Ridley loss may be the death nail, which kind of stinks because I thought they were playing some really really good footy. So
Yeah.
we
And to
jumped
be
to
fair,
go
I
ahead.
don't think many people had them making the eight before the season started, but
Hmm.
yeah, how they went for the first two-thirds of the season showed some promise. So I guess it's, although the season might be slipping away for them, it's definitely something to look forward to next year if you're a Bomber supporter.
Yeah, another off season. I think Essendon will be fine. I think they've got a nice little list. Can they retain Parrish? Can they retain Redmond? I think is the main
Mm.
questions there. So we'll jump over to it. MCG in a game that I remember seeing, and this is one of those where I couldn't watch it live because I had to go to bed since I wanted to watch the Swans game. But
Yeah.
I thought about watching this game because I was like, there's something about this game. It just intrigues me because Sicily's back for Hawthorn, and when Sicily plays, Hawthorn is a different team. It's really
Yeah, it's
weird.
interesting.
And I remember seeing somebody put on Instagram like saying, "Oh my God, we won," and I was like, "What are you talking about? You're playing Hawthorn." So I watched the highlights and was like, "Are you kidding me right now?" Like Hawthorn for the most part, played really well in this game, had a nice little lead, and then it was a little bit of a bit of Richmond becoming Collingwood, a fourth quarter comeback, and the Tigers get a goal late by Liam Baker, the little Liam Baker, who I absolutely love. He's absolutely so much fun to watch because he's their utility knife for the Richmond Tigers.
Yeah.
And they get the 1 point win over the Hawks, 96-95. The Tigers save a disastrous loss in their run to try to make the finals. But man, if I'm a Tigers fan, this was one of those you got to thank whatever gods you pray to because this was an escape of the lifetime.
Yeah, of the highest order, considering how far ahead Hawthorn were at three-quarter time. And yeah, it keeps Richmond in the hunt. So where Hawthorn might have been playing for a bit of pride, especially with their coach, Sam Mitchell. He's a pretty proud person. Like you said, yeah, Hawthorn were doing everything right. I checked before, and like even Chad Wingard, I noticed he kicked three goals because I too didn't get to watch the game either. I heard bits and pieces on the radio while I was driving around um, that day. But I guess for someone who knows Chad Wingard, if he's kicking three goals, it must mean the team's doing pretty well. And then they've got the likes of Mitch Lewis, who is pretty good in my opinion, and will be a power forward of the competition going into the future. But yeah, yeah, it's like Hawthorn supporters would be reeling because of the lead that they let go. And look, yeah, they're playing for a bit of pride. There's not much to get out of the season apart from um, showing promise.
Mhm.
You know, if your season's lost, the end of season games, you like to shake it up a little bit and show your fans a little bit of hope for the next season. And yeah, they did really well, but unfortunately, Richmond, who are under McQualter now, their caretaker coach, have regained a bit of their spirit, and yeah, they're not easy to put away. They had that game against Brisbane, which is probably the outlier in their last 8 weeks. Um, but yeah, who doesn't love a last gasp goal? And it's funny, Liam Baker's a fairly composed person. They've moved him around the ground in the last few years, and when he was on the half back line, he always looked sure by hand, never looked rushed or stressed. Um, so yeah, interesting that he had it at the end and sealed the deal. I think there was a minute left when he kicked it, but yeah, did the right thing, put him ahead, and then they sat on it.
Yeah, it was one of those. I remember watching the highlights, and when he kicked that goal, it was like the eruption from the fans. But I was sitting here going, does Hawthorne have something? And they just, if I'm a Hawthorne fan, it sucks to lose that game, but you kind of there's got to be some green shoots that you got to find. And again, this young
Yeah.
team, they're scrappy, they're tough, they just don't quit. It's just a little bit of class at the end of the game
Mm.
is the only thing that hurt them. If I'm Sam Mitchell and I'm a Hawthorne supporter, there's a lot of positives to take out of this game. I know some people hate the honorable loss, but this is one of those you have to take a lot of positives out of this because
It's all in perspective.
exactly. And you pushed a team that potentially could make finals this year all the way to the wire, and you're near the bottom. You're near the bottom of the ladder. There's a lot of great things there. There's so many positives that I can take out of that
Yeah.
and a scintillating game. And I mean, I've heard way too many people discussing like all these rule changes, different things like that. I'm tired of the people talking about teams laying down. Like it really annoys me about some of these discussions because I'm sorry, when I was a player, no matter if we had a chance or not, I'm giving my best. I can't just lay down. So it goes against everything in my being. So seeing a team at the bottom of the ladder, pushing a team close to finals, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's got to be terrifying for Richmond that that happened. But I mean, it's one of those, it makes you chuckle a little bit because you know it could happen any time. So getting the win is great. Sucks for Hawthorne, but again, some green shoots that I think they should very
Yeah, and
much.
I think that everyone was kind of getting used to Hawthorn being at the bottom of the ladder after such dominance for, the best part of a decade and a half or whatever it was. But yeah, I think they've showed enough this year that to say that they're probably going to come at some stage and come hard. They're probably not going to languish at the bottom as long as what most people probably would have predicted after their list changes, especially last off season. So definitely a team to watch in the future.
Oh, I think Sammy Mitchell is proving that that decision was probably the best, which is really
Mm,
funny because there for a bit at the early part of the year, so many people were questioning it. But he's looking like a genius right now because he all he did was open up that midfield for his young, talented kids that I think they're developing. Yes, they're taking a few lumps, which is going to happen, but they've developed a lot quicker than I think some people think. So it'll be interesting to watch this Hawthorne team over the next couple of seasons because I think Sam Mitchell's got something that is going to be interesting to watch as we go on. So,
for sure.
unfortunately, not an interesting watch is the next game at Marvel Stadium as Carlton absolutely, as The Rock says from WWE, layeth the smacketh down on the Eagles. I'm a little disappointed. The way this game started, honestly, I thought we could see another 200-point game, and Carlton kind of laid off a little bit, which I mean, in a percentage booster in a game that could potentially be kind of a helper to get you into the finals to kind of underperform a little bit kind of surprised me. But a 71-point win, 140-69. And the talk this game, Charlie Curno's bag of 10. Now, do I sit here and say he should pin on his chest and be super proud of kicking 10 against a team that gave 200 points just a few rounds ago?
Yeah, yeah,
Probably not. It's great for Charlie's confidence. It's great for the Blue Baggers because you're seeing them up and about and ready for this week's game. But some injuries that I'm a little scared of with Sammy Walsh leaving the game with a tight hamstring, Trincana
yeah.
getting
He's had a
concussed
crap
by
year.
Sam Petreski Seaton. Carlton, unfortunately, this game surprisingly took its toll on it, and unfortunately, at the worst possible time with Collingwood looming next round.
Yeah, yeah. I know. And I think they left some players out coming into this
Mhm.
game against West Coast, if I remember correctly. So yeah, it's swings and roundabouts. To be fair, Walshy hasn't played well, he missed the start of the season and then took a few rounds to kind of get into it once he did come back in. So I guess they could probably look at it and say that they've played most of the year with him either out or not at his best. How deep they go, you'd have to ask a Carlton supporter um, with a balanced opinion. But yeah, look, whether it was by design or not, they're their highly defensive middle part of the year where they were scoring next to nothing. Um, was it a plan to shore up that? And now they've gone, okay, we've bedded that down. Now we can explode, and now they can touch into two facets of their game plan. I don't know, but yeah, they've seemingly flicked a switch. And I mean, yeah, as a Port Adelaide supporter, we were on the back end of it. Only weekend before the one just gone. So yeah, up against West Coast, it probably happened like we all expected it. I think before the game, you were thinking, "Oh, can Kerno crack the 10 because he kicked 9 earlier in the season against them?" Funnily enough, yeah, no Mackay either. So that'll be interesting for the rest of the season of whether he comes back or not. Doubtful.
It
Depending
sounds
on.
like end of the home of the way. He may be back for finals if they make it. Is
Mm,
what I kind of get from it too. It is one
yeah,
of those I've heard some people say it's like, does Carlton look to maybe move Mackay so then Kerno can be the man? And I
the
think
one. Yeah,
I think the reason that they haven't talked about it is because Kerno has had so many injury games missed because of some of the injuries that he's built up. And
yeah, yeah,
to see him playing and again, this is from a neutral outside, not baggers.
yeah,
I love that he's healthy. I love that he's playing good footy. He's a dynamic player. He's one of those guys you like watching because he is very athletic for such a big
yeah,
man. He
yeah,
does some things
absolutely.
guys his size should not be able to do, but he does. Can he stay healthy? Because I think it's kind of one of those where it's like if you move Harry Mackay and then down goes Kerno again with 2 or 3 years of very few
Yeah, you're
games,
so
you
exposed.
screwed your team completely. But if you keep Mackay, can you keep both of these? I mean, hungry hippos. And again, I don't say that in size, but guys that can golf up footies and kick bags of goals. Can you keep both of them happy? Is the $1 million
Yeah.
question? Because sometimes the big full forward, the ego, it depends on who you get. So I don't think so. Charlie Curnow doesn't seem like that. Harry Mackay seems very laid
No,
back.
you just got to teach them how to work with each other.
Exactly. So
And
I
midfielders not putting it on both of their heads either.
Mhm.
You know, yeah,
Or just
synergy
bombing it
between
and
lines.
praying.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, for the longest time, that's what they were doing for several of those games. So again, I hope the Blues all the best. It's fun to see them up and about. The Blues fans are absolutely you feel for them for all of the things that they've been through. And I think this season has been one of those roller coasters for them with mostly lows, but it'll be interesting to watch this team up this round against Collingwood because I mean, talent wise, it stacks up. It matches well.
mm,
Can Cripps come back? Will I mean how are the injuries? Were they bad enough that they needed to get a rest to be able to go next week? Or
mm-hmm.
are they because if they're out, Collingwood is licking their chops against a weakened Carlton team. It'll be fun to
Carlton, yeah,
watch.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, the MCG is
it'll
going to be
be
rocking.
95. It's a Friday night too. It's gonna get 95.
Mm,
I just have this feeling it is gonna be a loud crowd, but it's gonna be a fun game. I'm super excited for that one Friday night.
hopefully,
I may
yeah.
set my alarm to watch this. Unfortunately, sometimes when I get up for the Friday night games, those is when upset and blowouts happen, which I am like,
Oh,
why did I
I
get up
know.
for this?
Yeah, yeah, and isn't there? It's nothing worse, really. Like you finish the work week if there, and especially if there's not a Thursday night game, you look forward to the Friday night because you finish your working week if you're a Monday to Friday type operator, and for the footy lover, you turn it on, and if it's a fizzer, then you're just kind of sitting there
Well,
going, well,
well, and
"What
the
do I
other
do
thing
now? Because I don't want to watch this anymore."
Well, and the other thing for me is imagine B because this game usually starts anywhere
Yeah,
between
of course.
4:30 in the morning and 4:45. So it's like imagine getting up. Okay, it's like I'm gonna set my alarm. This is gonna be a good game. I'm gonna
Yeah,
get up.
it's even worse.
And then watching an absolute pasting, and then it's like it kind of starts your day off in such a downer because it's like as like and I'll
Well,
describe
it's
it a
not
little
like
bit.
you can go straight back to sleep either.
Well, I mean, by the time this game ends, it's about 7:30 ish my
Yeah.
time. I can explain a little bit better when we talk about the Swans because I remember several of my Swans buddies after the game was over, like reaching out. They were like, I can't sleep, and I'm like, the one thing about being over here is like I can enjoy the rest of the day. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of how it is over here. But it's like when you have that downer, like the absolute blah, you're kind of like you sit there and go, well, that's kind of a crap way to start your day. So
Mm.
it's kind of one of those. It's the plight of the
Yeah,
American
it's
fan
interesting flip
sometimes.
side.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So
For sure.
the ones that stink are the mid afternoon, like 4 o'clock games, because those start in like 1 or 2 in the morning. So it's like the game ends
Ooh.
about 5. So I have this internal debate: do I go to bed and
Mm.
sleep for 2 or 3 hours, or do I just stay up and then be absolutely exhausted come about eight
Hammered.
o'clock at night,
Yeah.
that later night? It happens. So now we'll rein it back in. We'll move up to the GABA in a game I was looking forward to. Really didn't pan out the way I thought it was. I thought this was going to be a great competitive game. Both teams getting after it. Good
Mm.
scoring teams, not bad defenses to good defense depending on the days. And the Lions get an 11-point win in kind of a downer. 64-53 was the final score, which I mean offensively,
Yeah.
not so good for an AFL game. But I think both teams defensively played really, really well. This was just one of those where Brisbane did just enough to win. For some weird reason, Geelong just did not fire offensively the way they normally do, and it became kind of a
It's happened a
mundane
lot this year
game
as well.
until the fourth quarter, and then Geelong made it a little bit interesting, but just not enough in the end.
Yeah, and they're never going to let up, are they? They're a proud club, the reigning premiers. Um, yeah, it's probably two sides shoring up their defensive strategy this close to the finals. Um, yeah, and I mean, you, we might see that from if we get top of the table clashes. Everyone's going to want like it's hard to simulate that match day pressure, whether it be goal kicking or otherwise. So yeah, not that I saw a whole lot or heard a whole lot on the radio, but yeah, just by looking at it, it kind of seems like they went in going, okay, here's a good chance to test ourselves for September. Um, let's make it a dogfight. It's kind of interesting. Although I'd like to keep the break on Brisbane as a Port Adelaide supporter. I'm kind of glad they beat Geelong because I just want Geelong to go away, to be honest. And if Geelong had have won up there in Brisbane, it would have been like, oh, a Geelong
Mhm.
coming. Like, are they, starting to play well at the right time of the year? And they've still got plenty of time to kind of show that to the competition. But any chance to kind of keep Geelong quiet is good in my opinion. But yeah. You mentioned the didn't fire forward to center, and yeah, it's really interesting because they got some of the best forwards in the comp, right? But on quite a few occasions this year, for whatever reason, and I think Hawkins is a bit like hampered in one way or another, which leaves Cameron to pick up the pieces, but they're still two different players, and you've got the other guys up there too. But yeah, for some reason it's just not working 100%. And yeah, be a brave person to rule them out, but yeah, they're definitely beatable, much more beatable this year as opposed to previous. And yeah, Brisbane did what they needed to do, albeit a late comeback from
Mhm.
Geelong.
I think Geelong a little bit too is they're hampered a little bit because their mid is not as strong. Cam Guthrie's
Yeah.
out, which he as much as some people he's a maligned guy that isn't talked about a lot, but he does a lot of the up and under grunt stuff that Tommy Atkins can do, but he doesn't do a ton. I mean, there was a point that Coach Scott threw Tom Stewart into the middle because
Mm.
his youngsters were just not getting it done, and I think that really didn't help them going forward. I mean, again, I found it funny that everybody was going, Cameron could kick 100 goals. And I kept saying in the back of I said, he's not going to, he's because he's going to miss a
No.
game. Well, he's gonna miss a game because that's the way. I mean, Coach Scott, the one thing I gotta give him, he rests stars when he knows he's got an opportunity to get away with it because it's not gonna burn him. And I appreciate that because he's plays smart coach. It's kind of like Popovich over here with the Spurs for the longest time. He would sit guys in games that nah, there's no reason. We'll be okay. You take a
Yeah.
seat. You get some rest. And it worked perfectly for him last year. But the thing though is that with Cameron this year is that he started off absolutely in fuego. I mean, literally, there are campfires that were jealous of him.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he's cooled off, and it's not just because of the concussion, but he's cooled off. And I think their midfield is one of the reasons why he's not getting the service that he was earlier in the year. I know Bose and Bruin are just they're okay in the middle, but they're
Yeah.
not
They're
Cam
role
Green.
players, in my
Well,
opinion.
Dangerfield's been on and off as well too, and I think
Hmm.
that's a key piece there. Blitzovs is great, but whether he's the ball distributor that the others are, not really. Isaac Smith's been injured or out occasionally, which so there's a lot of your really good ball movement in the center sitting. So I mean Hawkins, Cameron lose a little bit. Brian Myers, I'm kind of surprised they haven't taken him in the middle because of his surprising with his funky kicking action. He's very good passing the ball, as we can see with the
Yeah.
memes with Jared Waitley, kind of make me chuckle a little bit that all
Yeah.
that
They've
kind of
made their way
happened.
across the Pacific, have they?
Exactly. I mean, Brad Close, Tyson Stingle. I mean, there's some danger. There's danger in that forward line,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
it's just really one of those where it's the midfield is kind of taking away their petrol, so they can't burn like they did last year.
Yeah,
So
it's a good point.
it's
Yeah.
I look at Geelong this year and I go, they're not the same. And it's not Joe Selwood. I know somebody goes, Selwood was not that player. Selwood was your grunt down in the middle. He was almost your Libba for the Geelong. He got the ball out
Yeah.
and then he got it to his guys like Danger, like Cam Guthrie, like Isaac Smith, like Max Holmes. They do the delivering. He did the little gritty stuff that you need in the middle to just kind of every team's got one. That grinder, the Willem Drew for Port Adelaide. He does the little things that you just need him to do. So it's but it is one of those where it's like because he's not there, there's a little bit of lack of leadership, but
Yeah, yeah, he's not
their
easily
mid has
replaceable.
just it just hasn't fired. Cam Guthrie, like I said, is a huge loss, and I think that's really affected them. This
He
is
goes
not.
under the radar at the best of times.
I completely agree. He's one of those. I think most teams in the comp would take him because he just does everything
Yeah, he ticks the
inconspicuously.
boxes.
It's kind of
Mm.
funny actually sometimes to watch him. So again, Lions, I love it. I'm gutted for Will Ashcroft. Torn ACL that's come out since
Oh, at
the
the end of the year
weekend.
as well.
Well, the kid is absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, he loses the year. Will it kill Brisbane? I don't think so. Will it affect them a little bit? Yes. Their depth. Jasper Fletcher coming in, I think, kind of negates it just the tiniest bit because that youngster has really come on. I think he actually got the rising star for this
Yeah, he
round.
did. Yeah,
So it's kind of perfect. And you, like I said, you still got Neil, you still got Dunkley, you still got McCluggage. I mean, Zach Bailey, I think, was out with injury this week, but he should
yeah,
be back very soon. They've got Cam Reyna if you need to. You've got some guys that can go into the middle. You'll be okay. Harris Andrews is back to all Australian type of form here. It's great seeing the slink that is Harris Andrews play well in the back. Darcy Wilmot's come on. Kadeen Coleman has finally found his form from last year, which is great. So this is a Brisbane team on their day can beat anybody. It's good to see him play a little more defensive. I think sometimes they just played helter skelter, let's go type of offense,
mm.
and they got burned sometimes. Jack Payne has been a great addition in the back. I think
Yeah. I rate him.
this is the Lions team again at the Gabba, absolutely incredibly difficult to beat on the road. Especially Marvel, especially MCG, not so much. So we'll have to see how this Lions team does. Fagan's really going to have an interesting final season this year because everybody's going to look at him and go, okay, once they leave the GABA, what Lions team are we going to get?
Yeah, well, because they've amounted to not much. A bit of the similar criticism is on my side. Port, if Ken Hinkley wasn't the coach under the most pressure in a final sense as well, Chris Fagan would be up there too because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like you said, they can beat anyone on their day. Absolutely. They've got a well balanced side, but for whatever reason, they haven't been able to, even with home ground advantage in 2020. So, yeah, question marks will be there until they're not, right?
Hmm?
Until they do it.
And they win one on the MCG. They did it last year in an elimination final, but
Yeah,
unfortunately,
when it counted.
not so much after that, unfortunately. So,
Oh.
all right. And I know you and I talked about this off mic is the fact that both of our teams, which are the next two games, played at the same freaking time. And I was telling you, and I'll tell this is that with I watch mine on an iPad, and with the coverage, sometimes the score of the other game playing at the same time is at the bottom corner. And I didn't want spoilers because I wanted to watch the Port Collingwood game in its entirety, so I made sure I had like a cover so I could not see the score. I only saw it once and it was like mid-second quarter. So thankfully it didn't give
No,
away
that's all right.
anything that happened. So it's like when the score popped up, I was like, okay, so that's when that kind of happened. But I was thankfully pretty good at I had it blocked out. So do we want to go with Port or can we do the Sydney game? We'll say the marquee matchup for second. I think we'll
Yeah.
go that
Well,
way.
Freo and Sydney is next
At
in
least
line on the AFL app. So
exactly.
we'll
Well,
go there.
Sydney go on the road to Perth, which is never easy, and get a 105-76, a 29-point win. And the Swans are kind of finally starting to find their groove. Yes, a couple of wins over a Doggies team that I think is still inconsistent, and a Fremantle team that I think Sean Darcy's loss really hurts this Fremantle team. When he doesn't play, they don't play really well. Luke Jackson is a great backup and a pretty good player, but he can't make up for the dominance that Sean Darcy has. And it really showed. Sydney played really well out of the middle. Luke Parker back to his normal form, absolutely in fuego. And the old boy, Buddy Franklin, kicks 3 goals and has 3 contested marks, which is not something Buddy has ever been good at. Swans get a win. They look good. There's some people that were had kind of written them off a few weeks ago that are now starting to go, well, Sydney still got a shot. So it's very interesting to hear the media kind of change its tone a little bit on Sydney. Again, they're still not in. There's still a game back. So it's not going to be easy. And with the
Mm.
quagmire from 5 to 12, it is still very thick. So it'll be interesting. But I mean, did you get a chance to see any of this? Because this was a game that Fremantle had its moments, but Sydney never really were challenged after quarter time.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess in Perth, well, and it's been interesting because Freo have been a terrible first quarter side this season. So you look for little wins, especially when you're sitting where they are. What is it, 15th on the ladder? So that it's probably what they would have been talking about. Like, let's get a good start first quarter. But yeah, like you said, it was a bit of a non-contest after Sydney banged on their late goals in that first term. Um, it was all kind of said and done. Freo probably one of the biggest disappointments of this season, to be honest. And nothing's really working for them. And the end of the year can't come quick enough. I saw today that Darcy and Fife are both out for the rest of the season. There'll probably be other guys that they'll probably just go, yeah, look,
Mm-hmm.
go get surgery. And we're not getting anything out of this year. And it's disappointing. I did actually see Freo sliding this year. You can't trade out, 4 to 5 first choice players in the off season and get away with it. I know they brought in Jackson and O'Meara, but I don't think it was to their betterment. Well, more so because they've had to slot Jackson in a bit square peg in a round hole situation, and O'Meara is at the end of it, to be honest. So I had them sliding, but I don't know if I had them sliding quite this far. And on the other side, Sydney have slid, but I know you probably wouldn't want to talk about it as much, but I think some of their key injuries down back hasn't helped. And sure, their midfield and whatnot has probably dropped off a bit in the middle of the season and needed to find a little bit of inspiration. But yeah, you can't undersell the losses of their key posts down back, which have come back in McCartan and Rampy of late. So yeah, they're a proud club. They would have loved the fact that they could go over and build some confidence playing a team who's not doing too well. Knowing that they've got a team that played in the grand final last year, so again, did what they had to do and had a bit of fun along the way.
Well, anybody that's listened to me knows that I'm not an excuse maker, and I know everybody has injuries. It's great,
Mm,
but not everybody has injuries in key position places on a team with they don't have a ton of. I know that the off season, I know they've been connected with Barras and Himmelberg and all that. In fact, I've had a few discussions online with a few people on that specific topic on kind of because
yeah.
I know West Coast people are like, well, Sydney's going to have to trade number 7 for Tommy for Barras, and I literally said online, I said, all due respect to Barras, I wouldn't pay anything more than a second for him because he's injury
Hmm.
prone, he's 27, he's older. I can't throw a top 10, a top 20 pick for him. I'm sorry, I just
Yeah,
won't
I
do
probably
it.
wouldn't either.
So I look at it and I go, Patty McCartan's loss has been affected, but Patty McCartan, Tommy McCartan, and Dane Rampy for a good center, the center section of the team, that's your best 3 back line. Not exactly
Hmm.
something every team can go through. I mean, imagine with Port losing Alir, McKenzie, and then whoever your other back pocket is, all at the same time. That's a crippler for some
Yeah,
teams.
well, we felt it a bit last year with Alir out for a large portion of the start of the season,
Mhm.
plus everyone else. It makes a difference. I don't care what anyone says. You can't take quality players like that out and expect to play at the highest of high levels, like you were last year. So it affected them, and they're coming back well. Yeah, they're still in the hunt.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be interesting again. Pretty much it's to win every game. I mean, I think they can afford to lose one and still have a shot, but it's pretty much is. It's finals already for Sydney, unfortunately. But we'll have
Mm-hmm.
to see again. Fremantle, I completely agree with you. I think Darce's loss. I think put him on ice, get him taken care of, get rid of this season. You're going to get a pretty good draft pick. Potentially, there's some West Aussies out there that I think will be good things. It's just one of those where
It's going to Melbourne though.
I know exactly. That's kind of the one thing that I
That
think some
sucks
Melbourne
even
fans are
more for
cracking
them.
up a little bit about. But it's like I don't think Jaeger O'Meara and Jackson were bad bring-ins. I think they were good for what they needed. The problem is losing Griffin Logue, another really good defender, and Blake Acres, a really good winger that I think many people weren't talking about. I mean, you basically
Mm.
gave Blake Acres away for a bag of hammers. I mean, he
I know.
really
Yeah, he
didn't
just
go
up and
for much.
left.
Exactly.
Mm.
And Griffin Logue, I kind of understood him. I kind of understood him leaving because I think he wanted more of that main role where Cox and Ryan were kind of that. But he was that lockdown defender you could stick on a third or even a number 2, be really, really good defensively. And now I think they've got a little too much offense in their defense at Fremantle. So their defensive record has kind of wavered a little bit because of
Yeah,
that.
and
So
unfortunately, their captain in Pierce is getting exposed. I'm sure he would have played a large portion of the game on Buddy.
mhm.
Um,
He didn't do too bad. I think like a Bud is like I said, the resurgence of the pack mark and the contested mark, which he was never really good at for the early parts of his career.
yeah.
He's used his body size well. I at least Sydney has not been as Buddy centric sometimes as sometimes they can get. Sometimes when they panic, they see Buddy and they just go. And
Mm,
usually sometimes it's not to his advantage, or it would leave the defender the possibility of spoiling or coming in and intercept marking. This year, Logan McDonald, Jason Darmati, and Hayden McLean have become good enough targets. Teams are not always like Buddy has almost kind of sometimes become a a decoy because
yeah,
because
which
three
he's done
player
before.
three players will go to him and then they'll hit Will Hayward, an Isaac Heaney, a Luke Parker sitting forward, or an Armati in the corridor because Buddy led to the pocket on that side. So they're fine. I think the Sydney young midfielders for a while, I think they were worried about the wrath of Buddy. So they were always kicking it to him or they were balling guys. Now they're starting to go, oh, okay, Bud's got 2 guys on him. Oh, there's Armati in the corridor. Bang.
Yeah,
And with their kicking, Errol Goulden, James Rowbottom, seeing Chad Warner back, I think helped the depth of Sydney's midfield, which I think was really good since he had his calf injury for a bit. And Parker playing Parker footy was
yeah,
absolutely fantastic in this one. So this was more of the Sydney you saw last year. Pressure high. They attack the footy, they get turnovers, and then they score off that. Was it against a great Fremantle team? Absolutely not. And again, this is no disrespect to Fremantle, but this is a weakened Fremantle team without Darcy there. So This week against Essendon again, it's another test for Sydney. We'll have to see. So we'll go to it. I know you don't want to talk about it because of the end result, but let's go there. Adelaide Oval,
I'm happy to talk about it.
absolutely gorgeous. Well, I think this was a magnificent game. Like I said, I sat and watched the entire game yesterday. Like I said, I unabashed was barracking for Port Adelaide at the end of it because I was kind of getting really annoyed with the Victorian centric callers, which again, I know no disrespect to them, but I don't think they realize how absolutely god awful it gets after it becomes very annoying when everything is about Collingwood. There's nothing Port is doing right or nothing Port can do right. Or Port is great, but Collingwood sucks. That's why. It's not the Port's great. It just becomes very, very annoying. So Collingwood get the 2-point win. And again, fourth quarter comebacks again. But I'll sit here and say it. Port Adelaide showed you can beat this Collingwood team. It's going to take a really good performance at just the right time. Tell me how Adelaide Oval was. I know you were at the game. How magnificent was it, and how loud was it? Because it sounded like it was absolutely deafening at times.
Yeah, it was humming. Yeah, it was a belter. Stands were packed. I've seen signs saying that bays were full. That I haven't seen those signs out this year around the ground. Like it was huge, and you'll know when you eventually come over to Australia and attend an Adelaide Oval match. But at highly attended games, there's a bridge that connects Adelaide Oval to the CBD. And look, in all their wisdom, the state government didn't build it big enough at the time. They built it in preparation for the move to Adelaide Oval in 2014. But I digress. It was packed, and after well attended games, it's like you're a tin of sardines and you're moving at a snail's pace just due to the sheer volume of people walking across the bridge after a game. That was what it was like afterwards. There was people packed outside the ground afterwards. But yeah, in terms of in the match, there's the power supporters chanting the slow power chant, and then you had the Collingwood supporters chanting the slow Collingwood chant, all at the same time at stages. And I can imagine being a player in that cauldron, it would have just sounded like white noise. Like it does at the best of times. I know AFL players usually say that they can't really hear anything because all the noise just bounces off. But yeah, even in the stands, it was just shaking almost at times. And yeah, it was a highly skilled game of football, well contested. I think the forecast expected a bit more rain, but it held off for large parts. It was still a bit slippery, but it allowed for enough skill to be on display, and it made for a great game. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of Port supporters would be disappointed, but I think the main consensus is that pretty much the majority of people were proud of the effort, albeit disappointed that we probably didn't take some chances that would have put the game well in our favour at times, particularly in the third quarter. And I mean, me personally, I feel like we were the better side on the night, but you got to be the better side at the final siren. And unfortunately, yeah, we weren't, which is disappointing, but I don't lose any confidence. It's a good tune up, and yeah, I just hope the coaches are going to work in the back office and devising a plan if we were to meet them again, because I think we at full strength, I think we match up well against Collingwood, and I think you need to match up well. We have a negating tagger in Willem Drew, who can also he's developed an offensive side to his game, and you need him for teams like that who have the Nick Dacos. He's going to be brought up anyway. You got to call it as it is. You got to stop him. He's in career best form his second year. But then also they have Darcy Moore down back, and you have to negate him because he's a champion player. And I think we have the forward structure to do that. So yeah, it was a great game of football. I would have loved to win, but leaving it, I'm just as confident about beating them the next time as I was heading into the game on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, as coming from a neutral, like I said, when I watched this game, Willem Drew was absolutely everywhere. It seemed like is the Dacos tag always got him around the ball, and he did really, really well. I think for some Port supporters, there's almost a little bit of go, okay, if Willem Drew kicks one of the two behinds as a goal, they win the game. So it's the little stuff there. I don't rag on that because again, it's easy to sit in the stands and go, why didn't you kick it straight? It's like I've
Mm,
been on both sides. I can sit on the sidelines, but I've had the footy in my hand with a ton of pressure to kick a goal, and it's not as easy as everybody thinks it is. So, but again, Willem Drew played absolutely fantastic. The only thing that I was a little frustrated with was he shifted Drew onto DeGoey in the fourth quarter, and I didn't understand that move.
no,
DeGoey had some moments, but I don't think he was worth pulling the tag off Nick Dacos because of Dacos's intelligence and ability to get to the footy.
he's slippery as well.
Exactly. He's not somebody. It was the first time though in this game I saw him show a little bit of angst on his face when he got hit. I think the hits are where I think the hits that are getting to him are getting to him a little bit. So I caught that. I don't know if everybody caught that. I did. I caught it. That there was a tackle one time. He got put on the ground. You could see him wince a little bit. So I think if you get to him, you can get to him a little bit. But I didn't understand the Drew pulling the tag of Drew off of Dacos to DeGoey. That was the only thing that really confused me tactically. That Hinkle, I think Hinkle played it really well. I Charlie Dixon, my worry is he's absolutely running on flat tires right now. Like I
Yeah,
something
it's
is
on
up with
one
that
leg.
knee. And he always and I know he plays through pain and he's a warrior, absolutely appreciate that. But I worry that he's damaging himself. And I know you don't want to pull him out because he kind of rounds out your structure with Marshall and Willie Rioli and the small forwards. You got to get him off. He's got to get his body
Mm,
right. And I know that's not easy. And who's going to want to sit there and tell Charlie, hey, Chaz, take a break, bud? I mean, you don't want to.
yeah,
You don't want his
someone has
rest.
to.
But I was gutted for him. Like I said, that late in that fourth quarter
I
when they
think he
need.
copped a knock, which they obviously didn't expect to
Yep.
happen.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, it put a bung knee
Yep.
even more down the well.
Yeah. And then
I think
Finlay.
it'll depend on the next two games, how
Mhm.
they go. And
Yep.
they may rest him again before the post minor round bye.
Mhm.
And then you would have the bye heading into finals, which would give him two breaks potentially. But yeah, like I said, I think it depends on the next two weeks.
Yeah. So again, like I said, Collingwood is good. Their forward structure is very difficult because I mean Mason Cox, unfortunately, I mean he's just a tall string bean standing up there, but he's really not the dangerous full forward. Maya Check was kind of Elliott was his usual. I mean, Bobby Hill again, those two speed demons, they're absolutely incredibly difficult to stop. So I mean, I think Port did really, really well for the structure. I think Alir looked
Yeah.
fantastic, which very rarely does he not. He's that smart. Well, he's that smart of a player again. As a
He
Swans
is.
player,
Yeah.
there's still part of me that kicks me because if we didn't put him in a ruck for an entire season because Callum Sinclair hurts his knee, I think he stays. The reason he moved is he didn't want to play ruck. He wanted to play defense. That's
Yeah.
it.
He wanted to be the
And
man.
at Sydney, he was occasionally asked to be the second ruck when Sam Reed was injured. So that's kind of how that all went. So I absolutely love him. It's just one of those where again, Port just they needed execution in certain times. It just didn't happen. I agree with you. I think for 80% of that game, Port was the better team. Was Collingwood down? No, I think Collingwood actually played quite a good game. Port just was better. They were attacking them, forcing turnovers, and then making them pay the other way. It's just a lack of execution at the right time. And Collingwood's fuck it, I'm going for it type of attitude in the fourth quarter just really kind of caught them off guard. So
Yeah, yeah.
unfortunately
Pulling
for them.
shots from like the pocket or the boundary line. Um, you know, uh, teams plan defensively to push forwards wide, but then when they kick them from wide, like well,
Mm-hmm,
you just gotta cop it, applaud it. It's good football.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, yeah. No, it was a great game of football, and uh, I mean, I love Willem Drew, and with every one of these great games of football, his name keeps getting put up in lights, and yeah, I love it personally because there's plenty of other guys who can take the spotlight away, but he's getting his flowers as we draw close to the finals, and I think people are appreciating um, the kind of what am I looking for? But kind of his unique ability
Mm-hmm.
to negate when tagging has kind of dropped off in the last 5 to 10 years. Um, he's kind of one of the only guys in the comp who can do it to good effect and still be valuable in other areas of the ground and of the game.
Well, I'll say this to all the people that are like, "Well, nobody's been able to do this, Nick Dacos," and I have one name for you to put on to you, and that's Ryan Clark last year in round 17 or 18 when Collingwood played Sydney. Go look at Nick Dacos' stats and tell me that he hasn't been tagged before and taken out of a game. Just go look at that because he did. Ryan Clark held Dacos to only 15 possessions last year at Sydney when Sydney won the game. And then in the semifinals, Dacos had 20, and most of those were because finally Fly McRae moved Nick Dacos to the half forward line, not into the midfield,
Right.
not at half. So it's happened. I think Willem Drew did a fantastic job. It reminded me a lot of what Ryan Clark had done the years before, but I find it funny that so many people forget that Ryan Clark actually did shut down Nick Dacos in his first year at Sydney last year. So it has been done before. It can be done.
Yeah. Seems
Is
a bit
he?
ridiculous to be talking about someone in their second year like this, though. Like
It is. It is, but
it's
it isn't.
amazing. It's a credit to him.
The kid is intelligent. He's not a number one overall pick for nothing. I mean, when they get in the right situation again, it's not Collingwood's bad year that got Bucks fired. I think is an anomaly that I think most people try to make a big deal that really wasn't. They were 17th, but they were 15th or 16th, but they shouldn't have been. They had injuries at just the wrong time, didn't play well, and Bucks got fired, plain and simply. But the year before, they were in finals contention. They were in the finals. So it's like Nick Dacos came in at the perfect time.
Mm.
New coach has a different system that nobody's seen before, and it worked. So it just shows you the right father son or the right player in just the right situation can make a team. So, and that's exactly
Yeah.
what
And
has
they got a
happened.
couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, all righty, we'll jump up to Manuka Oval up in Canberra as the Gold Coast Suns firing of Stewie Dew continues to blow up in their face as they drop by 40 to the GWS Giants 103-63. But you want to know what? Instead of going negative, we'll go positive. I know I'm a Swans fan, but I'm happy for the Giants. Kingsley has done something I didn't think it was possible. And the
Oh,
Giants are currently in the eight as we speak on the ladder. Again, I know it's a Sydney Derby. I know we still have to play them later in the year, which I'm looking forward to, and I think it's going to be an absolute cracking game at
that's
Giant Stadium later on in the season. But
yeah,
congrats
yeah.
to the
It's going to be
Giants. I
interesting.
love this because I think Kingsley is showing if you can get the right system with the talent that's there at GWS, they can be a finals contender. Are they a final shot to win the flag? Probably not. But to make finals after getting Leon Cameron fired last year and another year that was preferably not worth remembering, I'm proud of the Giants because I think that they're showing the right system with the right players at the right time can be winning footy.
Yeah, and I think they've shown for most of the season that you have to beat them. Like it's very rarely that they've given up a game by high margins. They've had one or two,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part, they've been really competitive, and you've had to play 4 quarters to beat them. As is the AFL in its current form. And I mean, Adam Kingsley being a power premiership player, I obviously couldn't be happier for him. And he's made a tangible difference clearly. And it they've had a lot of talent, a core talent, should I say, surrounded by a lot of role players. And he seems to have got the mix right, and he's getting the most out of both those role players and even the talented people like Cornelio. He's had a resurgence this year, and it's obviously helping them to play better football all around. We still have to play. We haven't even played them once yet, and I'm fairly nervous about it, to be honest. Yeah, and it's probably a credit to how they go about their football, and in my opinion, they deserve to be where they are. Is it 6 on the trot now?
Mm-hmm.
5 or 6 wins in a
Yep.
row.
6 in a row. Yep.
Yeah.
They're
So
and they're just playing a brand of footy that it's stable, it's solid, it's there's no frill to it. They just play footy, And when you've got guys like Toby Green, you've got Stephen Canelio, Josh Kelly's having another amazing season, and then getting Sam Taylor back, who is
Yeah, I
a
love Sam
all
Taylor.
Australian great fullback that can take away a top level full forward out of the game. That can change games just right. And the emergence of Kieran Briggs, I think, has been absolutely insane. He has told Matt Flynn, take a seat, young man. This is my job. And that's what he's done. And I mean, what
You
was it?
love that.
At one time, Champions Data had Kieran Briggs as the number one player in all of the AFL for like a
Yeah.
5 round stretch. He was that good in the ruck. I mean, everybody expects Max gone, the Sean Darcy's,
Yeah.
the Brody Grundys of a couple of years ago. But for
Mm.
Kieran Briggs to be the number one player in the AFL by data points for champion data was absolutely mental. But
Hmm.
it just shows if you can get the right guy in the right place, it'll work. They've got talented guys. They've got some grit guys. I mean, Callum Brown has stepped out of nowhere. The Irishman who's went forward and kicked goals. It's great to see. Connor Iden is a no nonsense defender
He's
that
improved
plays.
more than I thought he
Mhm.
would.
This is a GWS Giants team that, I mean, they could pump out of your Wheaties and you wouldn't know who they were, but they just get
Yeah,
stuff done.
exactly.
They're a fun team. They're a fun team to watch. And again, it's weird. I know somebody's like, "You're a Swans fan, coach." I respect the Giants. Maybe it's because my producer is a Giants fan, and to see his face and how happy he is, how the Giants are doing this year, a year that he's not covering the game, is kind of funny. But I'm happy for the Giants. I look forward to that Sydney Derby because I think it's going to be
Yeah.
another
Yeah, it'll
cracker.
be
After
good.
earlier in the year,
Yeah.
Toby Green killed us and one defensive error cost us the game. But again, Giants win the game. You
That's
got to
what
play
happens. Yeah.
all the 80 minutes of the game. So I'm happy for the Giants. Again, I think the Stewie Doo firing was several weeks too early. And I think this is a game where they pay for it. I'm going to be bluntly honest. I don't think they should have fired Dew when they did. Last week's win, if Dew stays on, they win. Okay, now the Gold Coast is being talked about finals again. This is the
Yeah.
loss that I put on. They fired him too early. I under Most likely he was going to go after this year, unless they made finals. Everybody knew that, but this reeks like Limburger cheese here. I just don't like it. I don't like it at
Mm.
all. And I think Gold Coast is now paying for it. And I think, unfortunately, I see them getting pounded more and more as the rest of the season goes because
Yeah, just give up.
there's there's no reason to win now because I mean they're pretty much out now. Unfortunately, if you look at the ladder, unless a lot of things happen,
Yeah. A miracle.
but the machinations just I don't think will fit out because so many of these teams are playing each other that one is going to win unless you get a ton of draws, which would make for quite interesting viewing as the season goes on. I just don't
Yeah.
see it happening,
Well, and
unfortunately. So
I've just looked at Gold Coast run home. They've got the Q Clash,
mhm.
Adelaide, Sydney,
Sydney, yep,
Carlton, and then the last round they have North Melbourne, which by that stage, who knows, maybe North Melbourne might be in with a shot with how defeated Gold Coast might be by that stage. But that's a
yeah,
tough
it's
run.
their next month. I have a hard time seeing them win more than one. I really, really do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going
Unless
to be
they
tough.
catch one of those teams by surprise. Well, Adelaide maybe with Isaac Rankin going down, I think they're a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more vulnerable, unfortunately. But I just again, I just think Stewie Doo got his leash cut too early, and I think
Yeah, they hung him out
now
to
they're paying
dry.
for it. Oh, just hung him out to dry in every single sense of the word, and it's disgusting. And maybe it's the coach in me I just think he got scapegoated in something that wasn't his fault, and I think that's the part that's the most frustrating. So I want to get off this. We'll jump to it. Your Adelaide rivals go over to Melbourne, and hot damn, I thought they were going to pull a Collingwood there for a second. I got tuned into the fourth quarter. I'm like, oh, Melbourne's got this good enough defensively. They'll be okay. Holy shnikes, is Adelaide going to do it? And they almost did. Darn Cade Chandler as a 97-93 win by the Melbourne Demons. But I mean, I don't want to talk about the negative, losing Isaac Rankin and Murray both in this game. Murray to an ACL, Isaac Rankin to
Yeah.
a horrible hamstring, and an incredible play where he got it inside and led to a goal. But oh man, the Crows coulda, shoulda, would have moments, unfortunately. But the D's just too good. They execute the way they need to, and looking more and more like Max Gone is going to be the rock, and is Brody Grundy now potentially looking at finding a third club because will it work?
Oh. Yeah, isn't that just a story within a story? Yeah, I actually watched the last quarter of this game, and I think part of the third quarter as well. And yet again, Adelaide shooting themselves in the foot early, or well, for most of the game, kicking inaccurately. And to be honest, I thought Melbourne would account for them fairly easily, being at the MCG and after their previous week as well.
Mhm.
Um, but and I mean, yeah, at one stage they were like 5 or 6 goals up,
Mhm.
and Adelaide just went bang, 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 and it's things like that with Melbourne this year that although they're in fourth place, are just anyone can win on their day, right, in finals. But yeah, I don't know if they've showed enough for me, unfortunately. And yeah, one of my closest friends is a Melbourne supporter, and so yeah, it pains me to say that, but yeah, I just yeah, they got out of jail a little bit in the end after looking to be ahead quite comfortably at three-quarter time. Um, yeah, it's and now Adelaide come into a showdown, and it's make or break for them. And I guess Melbourne can take a breath and look ahead.
It is one of those. You look at the final score and you go, "Oh, this looks like it was a good game." Mid third quarter, you're like, "This was not." If you look at the score worms, this is just one of those where it shows you that if a team can get on a run, momentum is a
Yeah,
fickle mistress. So, and I look at it and I go, both teams walk out of this with some question marks, a little bit more. Um, Melbourne can they hold on? Is a fast scoring team like a Collingwood going to get them in the finals? A lot like what Adelaide happened, even though they had beat Collingwood earlier in the year. But I look at this Melbourne team and I go, profile wise, they still have Clayton Oliver and Bailey Fritz still to come back into this team. So it's like this is the team after Port Adelaide. Brisbane, I have still some question marks, but the top four on their day can all win the premiership, can all win the premiership. Melbourne's base the way they have, especially if they get Oliver and Fritch back, can win the finals. Port Adelaide can win the finals. Brisbane can win the finals. Collingwood can win the finals. What of those four is going to do it? The biggest question is these last 6 rounds are going to be absolutely crucial because Port can't slip because you don't want to fall out of that second spot. You want to be able to stay at the Adelaide Oval until the grand final. If you can do that, you have a shot.
mm,
If you fall down to third, then it gets very, very tricky because you're most likely, if you're Port, you're going to Brisbane for that first qualifying final. Not easy. They don't lose many there. So there's a lot of machinations, even in the top four, that you're still kind of discussing. Unfortunately, I think Collingwood will win the minor premiership unless we
yeah, yeah,
we
absolutely.
cross our fingers and maybe Carlton pulls an upset and then things could get interesting. But I don't think Collingwood drop enough. But in some situations, and this is a little bit masochistic of me, I almost kind of want them to go in overconfident because this is a Collingwood team that I don't think their brand will stack up in finals like it did
Mm,
last year. Personally, again, last year
that's a
you
hot
look at it,
take.
not really. Look at last year. Geelong, they lost. They blow out their semifinal game against, I think it was the doggy, or no, yeah, and then they lose to Sydney. Now, was that Sydney game on the road where this would be at the MCG for a preliminary final? We'll have to see. But I don't like their style because when you go into the finals, you're getting the best 8 teams. You're not getting a North Melbourne, a St. Kilda, an Essendon, a Hawthorn. Again, no disrespect to any of those teams. You can get away with playing crap for 3 quarters and then having a great fourth quarter. Home and away, there's a little bit of not everybody's going to go 100. Finals, everybody's going to go balls out. Will that system work? We'll have to see. Can they prove me
Mm,
wrong? I,
it's
I
going to
in
get
some
tough.
situations, I want them to try to prove me wrong. I really do, because it'll make fantastic viewing for me as a neutral, or for me as a footy fan. But I said it last year. I said I don't like that style because that style, it's risky because you're putting a lot into something that it may not be there because you'll have had 24, 25, 26 games on your legs. Will you have that energy in the fourth quarter again? So,
Mm, interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. I guess we'll wait and see because, yeah, I don't see them dropping from first now. Um,
Alrighty. And we'll jump to the last one, which I mean, I have a couple of really good North Melbourne friends, and I saw their tweets, and I was like, oh my God, are they gonna do it? Oh my God, are they gonna do it? Oh my God. And then I saw the last tweet and I went, well, that kind of ruins the end of the game for me. But so I watched the highlights. And, oh, I feel gutted for the North Melbourne fans. Didn't
Yeah,
St.
me
Kilda
too.
get the 8 point win, 69-61. But this is where I say this North team, I don't think are as far off as many people think they are. They're still a competitive team. There's some youth that I'm loving. Like I said, Luke Davis, Uniacke. I know Wardlaw had his hamstring. I think they need to get him, put him on ice, get him
Yeah.
right for next season. And I think the building blocks are there to make this team jump up the ladder a little bit quicker than some. A lot like Hawthorn, I think there's some right things in just the right places. It's just a little bit more coaching, a little bit of changes. But St. Kilda, this team infuriates the crap out of me because at the start of the year, when he had his no-name team, he had a guy coming off the bench that had been working at a restaurant and was kicking 4 goals. But ever since the stars have come back, the old issues that they had last year are creeping back into their game. And I just don't like it. I don't know what Ross Lane can do to get that chip on their shoulder back because they're not playing with the aggression. They're not playing with the passion that I saw at the start of the season. And I know it's late on in the year and you've started to rack up some other injuries in some places, but some of these guys you didn't have at the start of the year and you played really well. So maybe there's exhaustion. Mitch Owens again, one of the
I
early
still
on
think their
was
best players are playing for them, though.
exactly, and that's Seb Ross. I think is a bit. Seb Ross is kind of a big loss. I know he was still in that early part of the year, and he's a linchpin again. The Cam Guthrie, the Willem Drew of St. Kilda. He doesn't get talked about as much, but he does the little things. He I think is a big loss, but God, the St. Kilda team is infuriating to me.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, they're playing a typical Ross Lyon type of football. Um, it's not very inspiring, but is that because it's Ross Lyon coaching, or is it because their overall list isn't as great as a lot of the other sides in the eight? Time will tell. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't look at St Kilda and fear them. I
Mhm.
don't think a lot of the better clubs do. So that probably speaks volumes. But as well as that, this game was interesting with the whole Brett Ratton situation in the background too, and how they again hung him out to dry. I liked the byplay during the week leading up to it, and yeah, I genuinely hoped North Melbourne would win more so for Brett Ratton as their caretaker coach currently. And yeah, I watched a large portion of it, more so the second half, and they had their chances, and um, St Kilda responded and got ahead, and yeah, just wished for a couple of their forward presses late to finish off to like for them to finish off their work, but it didn't eventuate, and I thought they got the raw end of a few decisions or non decisions as well late, which happens in close games, but. Yeah, yeah, disappointed for the Roos, and yeah, you mentioned some of their talented players that could hold him in good stead going forward. Yeah, I rate Larky and myself, and LDU is a champion already. There was a few passages of play in that last quarter where it reminded me a bit of like how Connor Rosie kind of just steps around players at will. Luke Davies Uniac was doing a lot of that too, just sidestepping people and making them look silly. It'll be interesting to see where Ben Mackay plays next year,
Mhm.
because their backline's probably their most vulnerable line, in my opinion.
Yeah, Aiden Core played in one of his better games, so they just need consistent play out of that back. And again, Griffin Lowe tearing his ACL doesn't help because
Yeah, true.
he brought in a lot again, so he's a loss. I think North, I think, has a good shot of trying to keep Mackay, but my worry is are they more looking at, hey, let him go. We'll get a compensation pick. We can bring in a couple of things and maybe draft a top level defender and then maybe develop with the youngsters like a Wardlord, the Sheezels, and all that. So we'll have
Yeah.
to see. There's a lot of machinations on that. We'll have to see how that goes. Again, will Clarko fully come back and be in it, or is Clarko kind of, is he starting to wane on really coaching anymore after everything that kind of happened earlier in the year? We won't go
Yeah.
into it, but that's a storyline that I look at and I go, there's still more to it personally than I
Yeah.
think
They just need
that.
to settle as a club.
And
So many moving
unfortunately, they
parts.
can't. I mean, they're built on
Mm,
sand right now. They have no foundation right
yeah.
now when it comes to it on kind of what they want, because every time they set something up, something falls out or something falls through. So I don't know. Again, the talent is there. The list is starting to kind of shape, but we'll have to see again. Goldie's most likely is going to retire. Shields most likely will retire after this year. So you're replacing a couple of aging veterans. Will they come into the coaching staff? That'll again. I like North's list. I don't think it's as horrible as people say. It's just there's still some things that are going to have to they're going to have to kind of tie up and change a little bit. We'll have
Yeah,
to
they've still
see.
got some pain to work through for sure.
Unfortunately, I don't think as much pain as West Coast, but we'll have to
Yeah,
see.
well, I mean, they've still got a whole lot of veterans to move on or yeah, retire or whatnot. At least North are in the phase of majority younger players in their list who can grow together.
Yeah, I think Hawthorne and North are already through that area. I think West Coast, this is their off season where there's several vets get shifted off. So, all right, we'll jump to it. The burning questions. Some of these are going to be interesting, especially with the guests that I have on this one. And I know I sent them to it. So I'd be interested to see how it goes. First one, we kind of discussed it a little bit. Are Collingwood the obvious favorite to win the premiership, or is there another team? And I know you want to say Port Adelaide, but just do me the tiniest favor. Put Port Adelaide to the side because I know you're going to say them because I know you're a massive Port fan and I have no issue with that. After Collingwood, is there another team, Port excluded, just for this situation,
Yeah,
that can win the premiership?
I don't think so. Um, I think Collingwood are the clear favourite right now for sure. I don't think Port are the favourite. I think Port had a fantastic 13 weeks of football and it's put them in such a good position. They deserve to be there. But I think for me, it's just a bit of a weird one this year where the mid part of the ladder is so close and tense and there's a fight, but I feel it's a fight to just play finals. If you know what I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
I think even within the top four, like I said before, Melbourne they're fourth and they've been fourth for many weeks now. The top four hasn't really changed, but can they have they played their best football? I don't know. Is it going to be good enough? I don't know. Brisbane, they seem to be building, and they've had a good run as of late. But are they gonna? Yeah, I just don't know. And I don't. It's no disrespect. It's just trying to look at it objectively. I don't know. And hey, yeah, are they playing their best football? Probably not, in my opinion. Are they capable? Yes. But the question was, are Collingwood the obvious favourites right now? And yes, they are
Mm-hmm.
for me, for sure. They're number one. Like Maynard said, they are number one for a reason. It offered good fodder for the game against Port on the weekend. But it's true. Um, they're the best team right now. Um, they can be beaten, but so can anyone. But they can also beat you. So yeah, they're the favourite for mine.
For me, I look at it like this, and I'll caveat it: healthy, fully healthy after Port is Melbourne, because Melbourne's structured defensively. And with the Bulls in the midfield and Max gone, who I think dominates Cameron and Cox no matter how they play, even
Yeah,
if it's Van Royen, Melbourne has the setup to beat Collingwood because they won't let Collingwood run their game. When they played earlier in the year, it was one of the few teams. And then I've heard Collingwood fans,
yeah,
well, they had
yeah.
all their flu issues. No, your flu issue,
I'm not buying that as
your
well.
flu issue changes would not change that game because you didn't run at all in that game. So you
And if
can't tell
Melbourne
me you
kicks
didn't
straight,
have the
they
energy.
dominate them.
Yeah, well, in that too. Melbourne has the structure. Again, Brisbane is the only question mark in the top four because I just think at the G, they struggled defending the bigger ground. Gabba, they're okay. G, not so much as they've kind of proven. Yes, they beat the D's, but I think the D's kind of overlooked them, and Brisbane just caught fire at the right time. Melbourne and Port are the two teams outside of Collingwood that I think are really because of the way they have, like I said, caveat is Clayton Oliver, Bailey Fritch are both healthy and back. If they're not, then I'm a little iffy because I think Clayton Oliver with the mids of Jack Viney, Angus Brayshaw being able to come in, Petrarca being able to come in, but then also go forward and be that striker like he has been last
Yeah,
couple of rounds,
that's
I
awesome
think
lever
is
to
a
pull.
deadly combination that Collingwood will hate because Melbourne has that little bit of a quicker for the Keziah Pickett. Who do you put on him? You put Isaac Quaynor on him, but then who guards Cade Chandler?
It's a good
Who
matchup.
guards Bailey Fritch? If Max Gawn goes forward, okay, Max Gawn's in the middle, Van Royen, and now Ben Brown's starting to play good, decent footy in the Melbourne system, unlike previously where he stood out in a negative way.
Mm.
So okay, with Collingwood, Darcy Moore takes Ben Brown. Well, honestly, Ben Brown can just play decoy and pull more away from those
More, yeah, I think
contests.
that's what you have to do with more, to be
Yep. And with
honest.
Murphy will take Van Royen, and I like that matchup because I think Van Royen's quicker and Van Royen's got a pretty good leap. So I think he can get Murphy uncomfortable. And
Mm.
Keziah Pickett, Quaynor has the speed to stay with Pickett, but Pickett can go into the middle and switch with Petrarca. Now Quaynor's outsized. You can man him up. I don't defensively, I don't like the matchups for Collingwood because I see advantage over advantage for many of it,
Mm.
especially
Some X factor for
if you
sure.
can take more out of the game. If you can take more out of the game, you can kind of weaken this defense. They're good. Bruzzy Maynard's going to shift off and be a pain in the ass like he always is, but it's
He's
just going to
passionate.
happen. But Melbourne, if they're healthy, is the team outside of the four. And the fact that right now, if you see it, if you go to the finals right now, Melbourne would play Collingwood. And if Melbourne is
Yeah,
healthy,
and that's
Bailey
it
Fritch,
at the
Collingwood
MCG.
could be in the elimination, have to play an extra game and go on the road because with the loser would have to go on the road for that elimination final or no for the
Mm,
prelim final they would then have to go on the road and they're potentially playing Port or Brisbane.
maybe.
So
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
it
It's
it
there's
sets
the
up a
possibility.
pretty mouth-watering first week of finals for sure. And I guess one of those big questions for mine is, can Melbourne get healthy at the right time? Like, are we going to see Oliver again this year? I have no, like, his hamstring injury has kind of lasted a lot longer than your
Mm-hmm.
typical hamstring strain. It's a
I
really
think he
interesting
keeps twinging
situation.
it. I think they just need to ice him they need to ice him and then put a nice little patch
Yeah.
of running in that last round and then give him that ability to come into
Uh,
that first
Buy into the
elimination.
conspiracy theories. Let's get real. Tinfoil hat. I don't know.
I'm
Pick one.
no,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. I just think I just think it's one of those that Melvin is throwing out information that's not true. They kept saying he's close, he's close. I don't think he was ever close. I just think they were trying to keep everybody on the back foot for when they were going to not have him in the team. So
I think
personally,
early he did something while he was supposed to be recovering, and that set him back. And I don't think they wanted to admit
well,
what
and
that was.
then they had the blister issue, which then he wasn't able to
Yeah.
train on that hamstring. So yeah,
So, but and then if he does come back, is he going to be match fit enough to be able to impact at a high level? Like,
the
that's what I
buy
mean.
the buy round
Yeah,
before I think will be absolutely elite for Melbourne, which is the other reason why I don't like Collingwood style a little bit too because they're a momentum team. So that buy round I
yeah,
think takes away a little bit of the momentum, and then if you play Melbourne, who's coming in cherry ripe after getting Clayton Oliver back, again,
yeah.
there's some perfect setup situations that'll make things quite
Well, that's
interesting.
it. Yeah, and I think Melbourne are the best shot to beat them um,
I think
early in the
Port's
finals.
there. Port's there. I think they
Yeah,
figured
but
out
like, yeah, early in
things.
the finals, week one, MCG, yeah, that could just knock Collingwood's boat a
Mm,
little bit.
yep,
So yeah, for all the questions, I still rate Brisbane and Melbourne,
I do
but
too.
yeah, I just have questions
Yep.
over them.
I have a bigger question over Brisbane than I do Melbourne. Melbourne is, like I said, if they're 100% healthy, they are deadly dangerous. It's the fact that they
Mm-hmm.
haven't been is the question in there. So we'll jump to it. Next question: what team outside of the eight currently do you think is most likely to get into the finals by the end of the home and away? Now, as we kind of discussed, there's 4 teams right now outside of the finals that I still think have a shot. Sydney, Essendon, Richmond, Carlton.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because it's funny how GWS are in the 8 right now.
Mhm.
When you'd probably view them as a team outside the 8,
Last week they were.
jostling. But yeah, that's right. Because yeah, they're going
Essendon
pretty well. They
Essendon
might make
falls
it,
out and
but
GWS falls in. That is exactly how it
yeah,
went.
but they're in the 8, so they don't count. But I guess yeah, Carlton seem like the most obvious right now. They're playing good football, but I think also their draw is fairly generous outside of the upcoming match against
Mhm.
Collingwood. So I think that helps. I haven't really studied the fixture for everyone, but I believe from the chat around that they have a fairly generous draw after Collingwood. So if they keep
Mm,
playing the way they're playing,
it's actually a little bit stronger than I originally thought. So Collingwood this week, then it's St Kilda, Melbourne, Gold Coast, and GWS. So it's not. I I've heard a lot of people say the GWS Carlton game at the end of the year could be an elimination, one in, one out type of situation. But it's
yeah,
like looking at it, it's like you look at Gold Coast is most likely a win, but it's like you don't know St Kilda next round, where St Kilda's going to be. Melbourne, I
yeah,
mean,
who knows?
Melbourne, I think how's their health wise, and like I said, GWS. I mean, if GWS is out and needs to get back in, this is that last round game could be absolutely. I mean, this could be the Friday night game. GWS
Yeah,
Carlton could be the Friday night game at Marvel because that's how big this game is. But they may
yeah,
not because I know sometimes the AFL like to keep the more competitive, the more finals impacting games till later. So this could even be like a Sunday like matinee, like midday game. We just don't know. So I agree with you. I think Carlton, Richmond is actually the team that I look at as being that team because just the fact that like I'll pull Richmond's
yeah.
fixture
I was just looking at it myself.
real
Yeah,
quick because
and
theirs isn't
few
much easier. Yeah,
50-50s, couple
Melbourne,
they should
Duggies,
win.
St Kilda. It's a lot like Carlton. One that you
Yeah,
almost go and guarantee with the North game most likely. But I mean, Port in round 24, St Kilda, Western Bulldogs, and Melbourne this round. So it's like Richmond ain't much easier. So I'm looking at it going, looking at this thing, you would think it's probably Essendon, which is kind of disturbing considering Essendon is the team that, but because you look at
yeah. We were
Essendon's
just
run
talking about
home,
dropping off.
they have West Coast Eagles, North Melbourne in 2 consecutive weeks, so most likely 2 wins, but then GWS Collingwood to end the season.
Mm,
So it's like you look at it and go, the Sydney game is insane. And then
yeah,
it's like you pull up the last one, which is Sydney, which they get Essendon, Gold Coast, Adelaide, actually, Essendon, GWS, Gold Coast, Adelaide, Melbourne.
it
Not
is
an
really
not an
interesting for
not an
all of
easy
those
run.
four sides.
Not
Yeah,
an easy
they're
run.
all, and I mean it's probably a testament to the competition as a whole. But for those four sides, there's some that you could probably put a tick next to, but it's who takes their chances in the 50-50 games that they all have coming up. Um, but yeah, don't want to sit on the fence. So I'll stick with Carlton. Like I said, yeah, it looks like, and it wouldn't, if
I
I said
know.
to a friend of mine, if they end up finishing ninth after playing such good football for this last portion of the season, their
Hmm.
supporters will be livid. They'll be,
Hmm.
they'll be pissed off because
If
how
if
boring and defensive they were playing in the middle
if
part
I'm
of
a
the
if
year.
I'm a Blue supporter and they miss by a game, the social media is going to absolutely lose its mind. We thought it was bad
Mm,
earlier in the year. It's only going to get worse, which is
yeah,
sad.
sports
Sad to
radio will be a
say.
circus.
It already is most
Yeah.
if I'm being honest with you,
Yeah.
but it's just it intrigues me in many a way because I look at it and I go there's just yeah there's just literally it's going to be an interesting situation as we go on
Yeah, for
because
sure.
every single team in that four that are out, they have matchups with teams around them and with teams
Hmm.
above them and with teams below them. So it's very interesting to see how that goes. Again, each matchup, this ladder is going to be like clowns coming out of a clown car. Everything is going to change. It's never
Yeah,
going to be
yeah,
the same. So
yeah, yeah.
I'm intrigued. It breeds a ton of speculation as it goes on. So we will
Sure.
jump to my favorite part, and that's we get to see Ross. Ross
Oh,
is
yeah,
doing
yeah.
everything
Looking
he
forward to
can,
this.
but we get his question of the week, and I'm very intrigued. He sent me this. He sent me this via text message, and we're going to throw it to him really, really quickly. I know this question; it'll be fun. So, Ross, take it away.
O'Connor, that's a beautifully weighted kick.
Donnie, Jamie, great to talk to you guys once again. Everyone out there, thank you for letting me be able to ask you a very important question once again, this time for round 19 of AFL footy. So, what I got for you guys this week is Lance Franklin. He might just be the greatest goal kicker in the history of the VFL, AFL, at least according to a era adjusted chart from Insight Lane. Now this has put Buddy Franklin's marked up his 1,066 career goals to 1,211. This is adjusting for era. So like since in the modern era, kind of what they're going off of is that since it's hard to score goals, essentially that they're giving Buddy Franklin more goals, and whereas the guy he just passed, Tony Lockett, since it was easier in his era for him to score goals, they marked him down. They moved him to 1,209, and that's adjusted from his 1,360. So, with that being said, how much weight do you want to put into this? And are people not talking about Buddy Franklin enough for doing something that really we've never seen before? Guys, have a great rest of the show. Happy anniversary, Donnie, to you and the missus. We'll see you guys in the next one.
O'Connor, that's a beautifully weighted kick.
Thanks, Ross. A very interesting question for me as a Swans fan. I'm going to try to be as neutral as I can answering this, but I'll re-say it for you again, Jamie, just to be sure. Is that with the Insight Lane blog coming out, kind of did a comparison of eras and did an algorithm that actually would show that if you neutralized all of them the same, Buddy Franklin would be the best goal kicker overall at like 1,211 goals. I think is something to that effect. It was a huge numbers. I should pull it up to get the correct numbers. Yeah, 1,211 goals altogether on that as kind of the way it goes. So I love this question. How he writes how he says it is Buddy under talked about, which I find the question interesting. Your thoughts, because personally, and this is maybe because I listed it, I think Buddy is kind of sometimes over talked about because of his body of work, and I think the recency bias that everybody's like he should retire. He looks cooked. Da 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 da. I think he's talked about a little bit more for the negative reasons, more than what he's the body of work that he's done, and to still be doing it this long into his career and still be pretty damn successful. You got to
Mm.
tip your hat to him.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how often people try to retire champions. Because even myself, like I think that, and it's probably through jealousy, like more than anything, have probably undervalued the behemoth that is Buddy Franklin over the last, yeah, over a decade. Um, and I think it's not until they're gone that you look back in hindsight and value what the competition had. And I think you got to factor in the fact that that more so in the last 10 years, but 20 years since the turn of the century, defensive strategy has ramped up more than ever. As you would know as a Sydney supporter in way back in '05, that's when heavy just defensive strategy started coming in, and it didn't make life any easier for a forward. But on top of that, teams were also not employing, but you had to find multiple avenues to goal. Whereas going back 30 years, where most of these highly credentialed forwards and who were champions in their day, and nothing can take that away. The game was played very, very differently. Plus, being semi-professional or even a part-time job for some people, you're playing defenders who were plumbers by trade or what have you, had a day job, and then they played football. I know, yeah, you're starting to go into the professional era in the 90s, but it wasn't quite there yet. But at the end of the day, it was a lot of one-on-one football. There's a lot of exposed defending, which meant that a forward could have a day out where, yeah, you look at Buddy, he's had to grow up, play his trade when the game has probably been more defensive than it ever has been, and he still finds himself, yeah, cracking that 1,000 goal mark and up there with the best in the VFL AFL history. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see the algorithm, but yeah, I guess when you take all that into consideration, he's done a power of work. I don't know if I can make a definitive call because yeah, I didn't witness Dunstall or Lockett or Coventry, like, who was well back from that as well. But yeah, all I can say is that Buddy has had to do a lot of work, like I said, in the highest defensive era, and it's not going to get less defensive. It's just strategy. It's just professionalism. It's just the way sport is. And he's managed to find a way and pull through and find longevity. It's interesting. Yeah, we talk about how he's at the end of his career now, but I remember when he signed that 10-year deal with Sydney, and people were very skeptical whether he would do 3/4 of that, let alone extending it by a year. When he did, and still, yeah, albeit against Fremantle, but it's not the only time he's pulled a bag out on game day. So yeah, I think he will be underappreciated as a whole until he retires. As silly as that sounds, because you're right, when he's on the Friday night, Saturday night games, it's very buddy with some of the commentary, but that's in comparison to the game that's being played and the era that he's playing in. But when they put up the graphs and they go, oh, these people are ahead of him, then that shine's kind of taken off a little bit, in my opinion, but it probably shouldn't be.
Well, I think this is one of those, and I've had this opinion. I'll do it quick so that we don't, because this is getting kind of long, and I love these conversations, but I hate the greatest of all time arguments because I find them monotonous and ignorant, because many people come into them with recency bias or their era bias. Like if you talk to somebody who main time of watching footy was in the 70s, their favorite, the greatest of all time is going to be somebody from that era. And I respect that and understand that. But footy is different. As you said, it was non-professional. It was being played by part-time people, and now it's full-time professional. The game changes in every single sport. The game is not going to stay the same for the entire time that it's played. It will evolutionize, it will change, rules will change, different things like that. If you look at how difficult it was, as I hear people say this all the time, could Tony Lockett kick all the goals that he did in today's defensive systems? Personally, I think not. Why? Because he stood in the goal square and he let out once. If he didn't get it, he went back to the goal square and then had to wait until somebody was looking at him again. That won't work in today's game. Now, could Buddy go back there? Different recovery systems. Would he have played as long? Probably not, because guys were punching each other and getting away with it. So it is a completely different game. So I hate the greatest of all time arguments. I think they're redundant. I just think the best of their era, yes, but you can't compare eras because the rules are completely different. The style of play is completely different. Don't tell me about could Buddy kick 3,000 goals if he would have been in the 70s. No, because Buddy would have been punched, kicked, bit, and everything would have happened to him. That, and being an Aboriginal man, he would have had to deal with racism. I hate going there, but it's just the truth. It's a different style. It's a different system. I hate comparing eras because you just can't, because you can't compare them, because statistics they're completely different in each era of the game. So it's, so I hate doing that. Greatest of his era, yes. It's hard to argue he is not one of the greatest in his particular time period that he played, because you don't get a guy that's 6'6", super athletic, super fast, and can kick the way he did. There's part of me that looks at his behinds over his career and go, he probably could have kicked 2,000 goals if he would have kicked straight, but it's the mystery we will always have. So again, I love it. Is he underappreciated? Completely agree with you. I do think Buddy centric a little bit. Sometimes they get to talking so much about him when I think he is a much more humble, much more team oriented guy than I think some people give him credit for. Like as a Swans fan, I watch him all the time. The fact that he's smiling and getting to the Wicks, the Papleys, the Heaney's, the Mills, the Haywards, the Logan McDonald's, the Armadis. He's one of the first guys to them when they kick a goal. He's one of the first guys to give them a hug or a high five. That's a team guy. Like he's not just angry because he didn't get the ball kicked at him. I mean, sometimes he'll give the death stare to a midfielder that doesn't kick it to him, but he's one of the first to his
He's a
teammates.
forward.
And he's a really good field kick. That's the one thing that I love. He's a really good field kick. There's a couple of kicks. He needle pointed one to Tommy Papley in this game that he probably missed the defender by about that much and hit Papley perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So he's I agree with you. I think he's a little underappreciated. When he does retire, you'll see the greatness of his skills in the area that he was in. Greatest of all time. I don't ever go there because I think it's an overused, way too numerously thrown out term that I think it's losing its meaning to me personally. And again, that's how that goes. So we'll jump to the last question of my burning questions. And since you are a diehard Port supporter, I ask this as they have been battling injuries the last 3 or 4 rounds. If this Port side gets healthy, are they a legit flag contender? Can they go deep into the finals? Or are you worried their health could be the reason that they fall short?
I'm not worried. And yes, they can go deep if they're healthy. I think it's a really scary prospect if they get healthy. Obviously, the criticisms will be what they have been as of late. Can they actually make it to play on the final day? And I absolutely want them to. I want to be able to drive to Melbourne and watch that game at the MCG on the last Saturday in September. So, and yeah, I absolutely believe that they can do it. Yeah, we've kind of shuddered a little bit after the bye. And in hindsight, the bye probably came at a bad time, albeit we were the last round of byes in our group. But we're playing in a different mindset, I think, than we have in previous seasons when we were up the top of the ladder. It seems a much more confident. We've always been a dynamic team and team with a lot of X factor, and I think X factor wins finals and grand finals. But I think it's that layer of surety over the top of all that dynamism that is a bit different to me and fills me with confidence going into this finals. Like they seem like the job's not done, if you know what I'm saying. Like when they could be accused of resting on their laurels in seasons gone by, they seem to be on a mission, which is a bit cliche to say because of course they are. And I think in terms of injuries, we have got a few. I think most of our best team is still playing, albeit maybe a few people are a bit hampered, but we made a prelim in 21 and our injury list was huge for that whole season. I think we had up to 15 in season surgeries in 2021, and come finals time, we blew Geelong out of the water, and for whatever reason, we just didn't show up against the Bulldogs. So you flip that around, like I think we can do this year, and absolutely, I think we can go all the way.
Awesome. I completely agree with you. Like I said, if they can get healthy, this is a Port team. I think they're built just like Collingwood. I think they'll be perfectly fine. So we jump to the next section of the podcast, which I kind of take over a little bit, which is just always fun. But
go for it.
As we go to my team of the week, I kind of put together a team. Anybody that listens to me again, unlike the All-Australians, I try to make sure I get guys in the positions that they normally at. I give some love to wingers. So wingers are always in. So here we go. We'll start.
Which is a position.
Exactly,
Believe it or
right? They,
not.
they should. And I don't put midfielders in the full in the half forward lines though.
Yeah,
We
hate it.
jump to it. Round 19, team of the week. We'll start at the defense, start in the fullback line. We start off Hawthorne's James Sicily, Gold Coast Sam Collins, and Adelaide's Brody Smith will be our fullback line. Halfback line sees Carlton's Nick Newman, Brisbane's Connor McKenna, and St. Kilda's Jack Sinclair. Midfield, the Wings sees Josh Kelly of the GWS Giants and North Adelaide's Taryn Thomas. This one was fun because if you look at his heat map, he was percentage a lot more on the wing, but he started the halfback line in the team. So it was really interesting. So I plugged him in as a wing. In the center sees the Western Bulldogs, Marcus Bontempelli, Richmond's Tim Taranto, and Geelong's Patrick Dangerfield. In the Rock sees Melbourne's Max Gawn. In the forward line, half forward line sees Carlton's Charlie Curnow kicking 10 goals. Kind of hard not to put him in there. Fremantle's Lockie Schultz and Melbourne's Cade Chandler. And the full forward line sees Hawthorne's Mitch Lewis, Adelaide's Isaac Rankin, and Adelaide's Tax Walker. We jump to the bench. Defender, ruckman, midfielder, and forward, one of each position. GWS's Harry Himmelberg will be my defender. Ruckman will be St. Kilda's Rowan Marshall. Midfielder, St. Kilda's Jack Steele. And last but not least, the forward, Western's Jamara Ugle Hagen. Real quick, I know I threw a lot of names really quickly. Thoughts on the team of the week, real quick.
I'm glad. It's really interesting that Taron Thomas made it because I was watching, like I said, I watched the last, third of that game, and I was actually quite impressed with how imposing he was on the game, along with LDU, and he's had a tumultuous year to say the least. But yeah, I was kind of happily surprised watching that game to see how well he was playing and almost willing his side across the line. So yeah, like you said, there was a lot of names quickly, but I just wanted to touch on him specifically because I rated his game up, albeit I only saw the last part of the game. But yeah, he featured prominently in my mind.
Yeah, three goals. And like I said, primarily a lot of his possessions were on the wing. So like I said, he started as a halfback on the team sheet. So I was sitting here going, I want to get him in, but I don't know where to put him. And he usually tends to play more midfield. So he was a
Heat map
fun
doesn't
one to
lie.
find a position for, but a majority of his possessions were on the wing. So I kind of slipped him in there again. Is he the Errol Gouldens, the Josh Dacoses, the Hugh McCluggages, the Steel Sidebottoms? No, but I mean,
Yeah,
this
well, I think it's
situation, he could
interesting.
do that. So
Yeah, just remind me, in what most people would say was one of the games of the year, how many Collingwood and Port players made it this week?
very few because everything. Well, you got to remember too is that I think it was a little bit of a lower possession game because it was slick.
Yeah,
Um,
it was a very even goal because that's what I thought on the night as well, is that
yeah,
no one really stood out. Everyone had their bit.
it was
Um,
was it
and
Josh Dacos had a goal. It was like 25. Steel Side Bottom had 22 in a goal. Josh Dacos, I think,
yeah,
had 20 in a goal. Rosie had a goal in 28,
he's
I
probably
think it
stiff.
was. It was only because was it Bontempelli had two, Geelong, Taranto had three, and Dangerfield had two. That was the center mids. I lean a little bit on
Well, and that's the
goals,
thing.
a
There's
little bit.
only so many spots for midfielders. If you're selecting the team properly,
It's
all
my issue that
Australian
I have with all
selectors.
Australians, exactly. But
I
whatever. Okay,
I
so
personally think they should pick a second 22 myself.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that one.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation though.
All right, we'll go to my homage to the fourth and long part of the podcast, and that is power rankings. Ross did them every week, so here we go. I start at five, and again, I am a form. I'm a what have you done for me
Yeah.
lately type of guy. Last five, and then wins in a row. So number five, the Melbourne Demons. Number four, the Richmond Tigers. Number three, the Carlton Blues. Number two, the GWS Giants, and number one, the Collingwood Magpies.
Mhm.
Again, Port with the loss unfortunately falls out a little bit after their win streak again, tough one, and several teams with 3 or 4 wins in a row. So I was able to do that. I was sitting there going, my fifth place was the hardest because Melbourne had 3 wins. Sydney has 3 wins out of 5 with the draw as well. So it's like if Melbourne
Mm.
wasn't there, it might have even been Sydney, which was kind of interesting. So thoughts on the power ranking? Like I said, it is kind of a what have you done for me lately type of power ranking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you just when you see power rankings across other platforms, it tends to be fairly biased to the teams at the top. and they'd use different formulas. But so you forget that, yeah, there's still teams on various points in the ladder who are doing good things with your criteria across the last 5 weeks. So with that in mind, it's all completely fair and square the way I see it, because you're right. There's a lot of teams who I think have gone 3-2, Paul included. I think Brisbane were another one, and then like a whole group of them in the middle. So yeah, Carlton and GWS are definitely on a run. Yeah, I
I mean,
like it.
quite interesting. And it leads to some very interesting thought process going into it. So we always end the episode with tipping. I know we're early in the week, Jay. I know we're still very early in the week, Jamie. We don't know teams, injuries. So really quickly, like I said, take this with a grain of salt a little bit on how we go with this.
Yeah, sure.
The blockbuster MCG, Collingwood v. Carlton. Who do you like in this one?
Collingwood. Yeah, I don't know how you can tip against them. For mine, I won't be, albeit teams aren't named yet, so I might eat my words. But I don't think it's a game where they would probably rest players through ego and momentum. That's Collingwood, and then yeah, Carlton. I've just suffered a few key injuries or people missing for whatever reason. So I think they'll give it a good crack. They never want to lie down against Collingwood, so should be a good game. But yeah, tipping Collingwood.
If Cripps comes back for Walsh, it's a little bit of an even, but I still think the multiple head monster of Collingwood will get them. But if Walsh wasn't hurt and Cripps was coming back, I'd give Collingwood a little bit more. It's the issue I run into is that can they stop Collingwood going forward? With sometimes Carlton can get a little defensively frail. I don't think Saad is a great defensive player. I think he's good with ball in hand.
No.
After that, I think he comes a little bit of a liability. Let's see on that. Collingwood, but I think Carlton's in this. Curnow is going to be a pain. I can't wait to see Curnow more. That's going to be a fun matchup there.
Yeah.
Fun one down to GMHBA as the struggling Dockers go down to Geelong to face the Cats. I like the Cats in this one. I don't like the Mojo. No Darcy. Fremantle struggles. Geelong win this one and get a bounce back after kind of a tough loss at the Gabba.
Yeah, it's Geelong for mine. And at the start of the year, Freo would have probably been hoping to be in a position by this stage to beat Geelong and Geelong, because I think they have they've won some good games down there in the past. I think even last year, maybe. Might be wrong there, but yeah, it's Geelong. Has to be.
All right, up now to Mars Stadium in Ballarat. A very interesting one here is the Western Bulldogs take on GWS, and you know what? I'm feeling an upset here. I like the Giants mojo. I know this is a Ballarat. It's going to be very interesting to see a Sydney team go up to Ballarat, but I like the Giants mojo. I think the Bulldogs are still have some iffiness in them. I'm going to tip the Giants in this one.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, let's go 2 tips for GWS on that one. GWS played Gold Coast at Canberra on the weekend, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess going from Canberra to Ballarat isn't too different in terms of temperature. Taking Bulldogs out of Melbourne while they're on a bit of a run, and GWS are in some pretty good form. So yeah, upset on the cards. I want to tip them as well.
Yeah, I like the way the Giants are playing. It's very interesting. All right. Q clash that I think is a little underwhelming in this one. Heritage Bank Stadium, Gold Coast, Brisbane. Who do you like?
Yeah, Brisbane. For the reasons that we've spoken about on both sides. I think the Suns are going to slide as the season moves on. They'll probably have a good quarter, as they generally do in the Q clash, but I think Brisbane's got far too much polish and are coming into their own now. So yeah, Brisbane for me.
Do we do at the helm? I would be much more confident in the Gold Coast, but I like Brisbane in this one, even at Heritage Bank Stadium. An interesting one at Marvel Stadium sees Essendon take on Sydney. Can Sydney get back into the finals? Who do you like in this one?
It's interesting because Essendon and Sydney have had some great matchups in recent years, more so at the SEG. But with Ridley out, I think Sydney's forward line is going to be too imposing for them. You have to get it there, though. It's a tough one for me. Flip of a coin, Essendon at home. Did Sydney cop any injuries on Saturday?
Nope, not that I'm aware of. So
No.
they
I
got they
saw
got through it
that. I saw
relatively
that.
unscathed,
Yeah.
and the one and only sub that they had was a tactical. So
Tactical, wasn't it? Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. Let's go Sydney on the road. A couple of road matches back to back, but yeah, Sydney.
I think the Marvel deck helps Sydney a little bit with their ball movement. My worry is that the midfield it's the one thing. No Draper, I think, kind of evens it out. I think Sydney stays with the mobile McLean and Armadi unless they bring Adams back in. But the thing is, if they put Adams in, who of McLean or Armadi come out unless they decide to rest Buddy? I don't think so, because I think this is a perfect matchup to let Buddy fill his boots against an undersized
Mm-hmm.
field. I'm a tip Sydney. This is usually going against me. Usually when I tip against them is when they win. Previous 2 weeks I've tipped against them, and they've won specifically for that reason. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
it's a
tip
win-win
Sydney in this one.
situation
I,
for
I
you.
just I like the deck. I think the deck fits Sydney's style really well. Essendon, I think they're struggling a little bit. The injuries, like I said, the Ridley injury, I think really hurts them. Sydney's
Yeah.
defense is starting to play really, really well. I mean, Peter Wright against Tommy McCartan, I think is a pretty even matchup for me. I'll tip Sydney in this one, but I'm not super confident in this tip because, again, Sydney has played some teams. I played a Doggies team that underperformed and a Fremantle team that I think is really reeling. So it'll be interesting to see playing another team like Essendon. Can they step up on the road on a fast deck?
Yeah.
That'll be fun. So,
Yeah,
all
it'll be
right,
interesting.
here it is. Again, you and I, same time our teams are playing. Showdown.
Yes, yes, they
Adelaide
are.
v Port.
What are the odds?
I don't think I have
Yeah.
to ask this question. It's Port and Port all the way, right?
I keep forgetting it's showdown week. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
It's the most
yeah,
underwhelming showdown I think it's the least talked about showdown. Maybe it's just because there was so much into that Collingwood game. I think that's the reason why.
yeah. I think we're still coming down from that a little bit. And yeah, even 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks ago, this was shaping up to be a belter. And look, it very well could be. Showdowns are fantastic. I think the whole AFL football community would attest to that. But with a showdown, I just you have to look at it objectively. I have to. I hate to get swept away in emotion when it comes to the
Mhm.
showdown in particular, because things can blow up in your face when it comes to emotion. So they've lost Nick Murray to an ACL. They've lost Rankin. Rochelli's still suspended, which leaves Tex on his own. They'll probably bring in like a Gallant or something like that, I think, if he's not already in the side. Port will be hurting from Saturday. And yeah, I think our list is a bit stronger, a bit healthier, and a bit more talented. So Port in a close one. Yeah, I'm not sure if it'll blow out. And they'll be remembering the last quarter from the first showdown this year, and how we got up halfway through the last quarter and then we lost by 5 goals somehow. So that'll be in the back of their minds. A long-winded Port tip for me.
I got Port. I think the injuries hurt because they're on both ends of the field, and they're mid. Adelaide's mid is good, but Adelaide's mid against Port, it's not a fair matchup. I mean, ruck wise, maybe your only advantage, but Riley O'Brien is not
Mm,
exactly screaming dominant ruckman. So even if you
mm,
were to take Lysett out and play Finlayson and a younger player, I still think Port's midfield is just a little bit too good. I think that's going to give Adelaide headaches. I agree with you. I still think it's close, but I think Port win this one in a tight, as per usual, showdown, which I wish they had it by themselves. So it's like I'm angry because I
yes.
really wish one time they would just let the showdown have its own breathable air. But nope, Victoria, they gotta throw in
Yeah, no,
Essendon just to piss off. So
we
there's
can
there's my
keep
there's my
dreaming.
shout out to the SA for the SA people that I
Yeah,
know listen. So
yeah.
all righty, we'll jump to Marvel Stadium and what I think is a quite interesting game. Hawthorn v St. Kilda. I'm tipping upset. Sicily back. St. Kilda struggling. I'm tipping the Hawks.
Me too. Me too. I am definitely tipping the Hawks if they can replicate what they served up on on the weekend, and
I think they win
equally
it by
so
3 or
with
4
St.
goals. If they put up what they did against Richmond, I think they could beat St. Kilda by 3 or 4 goals.
Yeah. St. Kilda are not inspiring me at all, especially with what I saw on yesterday. Hawthorn for me too.
All right. Melbourne Cricket Ground, Richmond v Melbourne. Who do you like in this one?
Another good game. And Richmond are the wild card. They're playing for finals. But I like Melbourne's mix at the moment, with Gawn being the solo ruck. So that'll be an interesting conversation this week. But yeah, I think Melbourne. I think, and for all my questions over them, if they want to finish top 4, they want to go into the finals with confidence, then this is a game they win. So yeah, I'm tipping Melbourne.
And Toby Nankervis is back, so that helps out Richmond a lot when it comes to the ruck battle. But I still one of those situations where if they play like they did against Hawthorn, Melbourne will win and will win easily. If they play much better to their style, I'd love to know what the weather is, but it's way too far in advance for that one. I just think Melbourne has more match winners in the right places, especially in Petrarca could be an absolute nightmare because there really isn't a good matchup. You put Grimes on him, he's too slow. You put Bolton on him, that opens up Ben Brown. So I like Melbourne in this one, but I think it's another close one. And then another rip snorting great last game of the round sees the West Coast Eagles in Optus Stadium versus North Melbourne. Somebody in this game hopefully should get a win. I think I just jinxed us and we'll probably get a draw out of this, but I like North Melbourne.
I'm tipping a draw. Let's just go the draw.
I'm going to tip North Melbourne. North Melbourne a little too good. I know West Coast has got has been getting a little bit healthier. They've been playing a little bit more competitive. I just like North Melbourne in this one. I think they got
North
right
Melbourne
mix,
are favorites.
Is there really a favorite in this one? Unfortunately,
West Coast.
I'm sorry, but
yeah.
Alrighty, that will do it for our 9 games, sir. An absolutely outstanding chat. I truly, truly appreciate it. I know it's getting late there in Adelaide, so I won't take up too much of your time. Again, Jamie, thank you for hopping on the pod.
Yeah, no worries at all. It's been a pleasure. It's always good to chat some footy with another footy lover, and broad range of topics. It's always good to sink your teeth into. So thanks for having me.
No problem. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. Again, keep track, more coverage of everything. Waffle, Sandful, VFL, AFL, and upcoming AFLW, and more interviews. We'll see you again very, very soon. That's another episode of Donnie's Disposals.
Here's the song. Arms in the air. Donnie's gone through. Jamie Elliott has won the game of footy for this famous club. The legend becomes immortal. Smith at his pocket,